Today's talk will be on mining public data sets, experiences from the arts and culture with Kelly Hill. A round of applause. Woo! Before I take it over to him, for nearly 30 years, Kelly Hill has provided research insights into the Canadian arts community. His company, Hill Strategies, is best known for its statistical work. He will be discussing his experiences in mining public data sets for information about the cultural sector, including free data sets and custom data requests. I'll take it over to him.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the lovely introductions and the gratitude to farmers. I would second that motion. So yes, I've been asked to tell you everything I know about mining public data sets in 15 minutes or less. So that might be a little bit on the challenging side, but I will do what I can. Okay, so I've got a slide deck. Excuse me, if I can get things going. I've got a slide deck that I'm not going to spend actually that much time on. I've posted it in the chat, online chat for the online participants, and I think there's something in your Slack for the in-person attendees. My slide deck is available to you. The link to my slide deck is available to you, so you can review it, because I do have, the main reason is that I've got links on the slide deck to tell you where some sources are found, etc. So if you want to follow through on those sources, then you've got the slide deck. You can pull those out. I'm grateful also to Civic Tech Toronto and Toronto Arts Council for inviting me to chat with you folks today. 29 is nearly 30 years of experience in arts research. I've been an arts researcher for 29 years, or it will be 29 years as of February 10th. So I've got a few weeks to go until I hit my 29th anniversary of doing arts research, which I didn't really know was a career before I got hired to do it. I've started a company after I worked at the Ontario Arts Council for about 5 years. I started a company called Hill Strategies, which is known for statistical work and a unique focus on the arts. And currently I focus a lot on statistical insights on the arts series. And I said the word statistic well there because it is one of the harder words to say in a presentation, and I use it 100 times. So number one, I got it in good. So statsinsights.ca is where you can find information about my statistical insights on the arts series, finding, analyzing, sharing Canadian art statistics. I do articles weekly, distributed currently on Tuesdays, so there was one today, via the Substack platform, which is a decent way of garnering a bit of revenue from that. I will go to the actual live website, but this is a picture of it from a week or two ago, just to give you a sense of what's there. I've got things really categorized so that you can find things as quickly and reasonably as possible. There is also a search function there, but please spend time. All of my archives since I started posting on Substack in June of 2022, all of those archives are there from roughly 50 articles per year. So there's a lot of information there, almost 200 articles probably now that you could peruse. One of those, thanks to the TAC, was about professional artists in Toronto. When we want to know how many professional artists there are in any jurisdiction, when we as a country want to know that, we generally turn to Hill Strategies research, because I'm the guy who does that work. This is based on custom census data request, and I'll talk about what those words mean in a little bit. But there are over 32,000 professional artists in Toronto with a very specific definition of professional. There's all kinds of definitions here, excuse me, that I don't have time to go into today in my 15 minutes or less. But just to say that those artists who are counted as professional in the census represent 2% of the City of Toronto's workforce, which is double the national average. So yes, there are a lot of artists in Toronto. In fact, 1 in every 6 artists in the country reside in that city. Excuse me. I also create my own data when I have the opportunity to do that by doing surveys. And one that I did a couple years ago was how are Canada's artists doing? Talked about an affordability crisis and some really particular challenges. did a survey of artists and cultural workers across the country, and published separate reports on the situation of artists, which was kind of the core focus, but also other cultural workers who work in the sector. All right, moving to the core of what I want to talk about, public data sets. Here are just a listing of some sources that you might be of interest to you. Statistics Canada, which is statcan.gc.ca, not statscan.gc.ca. I think that's because of the bilingual thing. They don't put the S in the same place in French, so statcan made more sense, I think, from that perspective. But for us Anglophones, we thought it would be statscan.ca, but it's statcan.gc.ca. If you're interested in the situation of charity specifically, whether that's in the arts or in any other domain of life, the Canada Revenue Agency does have a charities listing. I've got the link to their advanced search of the charities listing there in my presentation. There are other data sites. If you do a Google search for Charity Listings Canada, you'll find some other sites that will allow you to peruse some financial and employment statistics on charities. No matter what the data source is, for me working in the arts, and this has been a constant challenge, it's not easy to drill down to what we would call the arts. As I mentioned earlier, artists are 2% of Toronto's labor force and 1% of Canada's labor force. That means that we don't always get reliable data on that 2% slice of society. So we really have to look hard to find sources that are relevant and that are reliable as well. And that what sort of drill downs can we use? Typically from StatsCan's classifications, they have classifications of industries, which is probably the most common. And the one that I look at most commonly is arts, entertainment, and recreation. That is one of the industries that they publish some data on sometimes, or that you can drill their data down to. Occupations, they actually don't have occupations codes for artists per se, but that's a grouping of occupations. StatsCan has, I think, roughly 700 occupations in their really detailed codes, and I've taken 10 of those to be artists. They also do products. So if you're interested in sales of books or whatnot, or the book industry, the books as an industry is under the industry codes, but books as products and sales thereof, there's product codes as well for certain things. So I'm gonna move mostly online and share web information here, but there are I'm going to talk mostly about Statistics Canada data that could be available and look at what's available there, and also a few examples of articles and sources from Statistical Insights on the Arts. See, there I had trouble with the word statistics. So this is the Statistical Insights on the Arts homepage. This morning's publication that I published was on trends in Canada's international trade in the arts, culture, and heritage. And at the end of each of my publications, I put the sources there that I've used. So if you go, there's always the data sources section, sometimes at the beginning, but usually it's right at the end. So I've got data sources that you could click on if you're interested in doing your own mining of international trade in some other sector, then you can do that. So that will pop you through direct link to the international trade data. Now this international trade data set is culture specific, which is the exception to the rule. Usually we're dealing with statistics that are not culture specific and that cover the whole of Canadian society or businesses and nonprofit organizations in every sector. So that makes for very different challenges. So if you're interested in Statistics Canada data, statcan.gc.ca, this is what you'll see there, their homepage. And what I use most often, they've redesigned their website, and I'm not totally thrilled with it because what I use most often is now at the bottom. It's news from the daily. So they have, it's not, technically they don't publish one every day, but they usually do. Most days, most daily maybe should be the name of it, they publish data on specific topics that come out that day. So today it happened to be general civil caseloads, urban public transit, childcare participation off reserve, Indigenous people, energy, transportation and storage, mineral production, and new products that are available. So uh, that is something that is a resource that is a kind of first look at resource. And I follow this kind of information pretty regularly, but I often do it via a link here at the top to what they call their release schedule. So I scour their release schedule, uh, not quite weekly, but I make sure that I go through every month at least to see what has come out and to think, oh, does that have any application in the cultural sector? And if so, or at least potentially, does it have maybe some interest for the cultural sector? And if the survey might have some interest for the cultural sector, does the data actually drill down to that level? There's a lot to take a look at there, but I'll just take a look at one page that I've got bookmarked already, gross domestic product by industry. So this is their publication, their summary of their information through the daily. So this is a page in the daily, a link that the text summary of gross domestic product by industry, and this is the headline that you might see in news sources of Canada's GDP went up by X percent or down by X percent during the past month. And they have tables associated with that. So there's a link. There's often, not always, but there's often a link to tables that you could then drill into monthly or quarterly average of growth GDP. And then this is what they do. You can customize each of their tables by adding and removing data. So there's lots that you could do in terms of adjusting this. So it does say by industry, and that shows that the industries are shown at the left-hand side, the main industries, and you can see the ones that I look at most often are information and cultural industries, and which is 51 in their coding, and arts, entertainment, and recreation, which I already mentioned as code 71, and what they would be. So the ability to add and remove data is something that I do all the time on this. Look into this one is only available for Canada, but if the provinces were available, if there were other geographies, most commonly it's Canada, sometimes the provinces, occasionally they delve more deeply than that, but it's pretty rare. You can adjust whether you want it seasonally adjusted or not, how prices are measured. There's a lot of really technical things here that I'm not going to get into, but the whole list of industries that they have available, they really dig down. So let's say we only want arts, entertainment, and recreation, and then we look at what's within that, and we say we want the performing arts. So we adjust that, and reference period. My question is always, how far does it go back? Oh, this goes back to 1996, sorry. So that's a heck of a lot of data. If we apply that, then you can see on the top, we've got every quarter of from 1997 till October, so third quarter of 2025, there's data on the arts, entertainment, and recreation industry. So you can choose your industry that interests you the most. Sometimes you can drill those down quite a bit. You can customize it, and you can save these customizations. Essentially, you can copy a link to this specific page that you have just made from your thing. So that I do that often as well and save my customization so I can come back. And another very important thing is that you can download. You can download what you've queried here into CSV formats usually, or database type formats. So CSV would be spreadsheet compatible type of information. So that is what I do a lot of my time when I'm mining for data. They recently published some information on confidence in institutions by gender and province specifically. So what kinds of institutions you can, I think, okay, confidence in the police, confidence in the justice system and the courts, confidence in the school system, confidence in federal parliament, low, high, medium ratings. Actually, this is all of the ratings from 1 through 5. I think they've got in a variety of different topics, institutions, and they've got the total for all people. They've got women and men broken out as well. So that's a lot of information that you can pursue and save what you look at, and then download and say and manipulate on your own and look at and analyze changes over time. So that is something that I do really, really commonly as well. From almost any Statistics Canada product, you could request something really specific to a sector that you're interested in, to a geography that you're interested in, to whatever it might be. In my custom data request from the census, which is every 5 years, so it's really, really in depth because it captures the long form census that captures people's occupations. Is 1 in every 5 households completes that, I think, or is it 1 in 4 now? So it's the biggest survey we have in Canada, let's put it that way. So we can certainly drill down to that 2% level to get reliable data on artists. But to do that drill down requires a whole lot of behind the scenes work of looking what StatsCan captures in the census, how the questions are asked. Each one of these surveys that we're looking on in the data tabulation format, they'll have a description of what questions are asked. They'll have a guide to using it, usually. So these are other pages, other sections, essentially, of the StatsCan website. And sometimes it gets confusing when you do a search on the StatsCan website, which is also very useful, hidden by my control bar up here. But if you search their website for certain things, you can find a lot that way, and I do find a lot that way. It can also sometimes get confusing because you might see what looks like survey data in 3 different places, and oftentimes that's if you're actually taking a survey, you can complete it online, so that might be one of the links you get. Then if you want to know more information about the survey and its questions, that might be another link that you get, and the actual data from it might be a third link that you get. So sometimes that's confusing, but it's you should be able to, through 3 links at least, look at what's available there and go, I don't think this is the right page, and then try again with one of the other ones. So just to give you a quick sense of the custom data request that I did from the census. I speak StatsCan in the sense that I know what they're looking for in their custom data requests. But you don't have to speak StatsCan to submit a custom data request. You could there's a discussion process at the front end of things to see what you need. And that is a good thing because I've actually gotten incorrect data from StatsCan and had to pull a report in the past because they didn't ask the right questions going in, and they produced something that looked like what I wanted, but it actually wasn't. The parameters weren't quite right. And I had really no way of knowing that other than if I was sleuthing everything that they might have done. So I made an Excel spreadsheet with the tabs I sent to them. I think there's 4 or 5 tabs of basically lists of things that I want in the 3 tables that I requested from them. And I specified the variables, what geography I wanted, and the largest cities I included as well in this one. Different geographies for different tables. The occupation groups were obviously important because I had to define for them what artists are and what cultural workers are, because those are not things that StatsCan counts in conventional ways. It's the cultural sector is not like other sectors in that it's not counted regularly within StatsCan nomenclature and classifications. So we always have to slice and dice things a little bit differently to try to find what we need. So what statistics do I want about the population that we're talking about? The gender, indigenous, visible minority, which is their term for racialized groups, potential demand, bilingualism, minority official languages, age, highest level of education, immigrant status, generations of immigration. So really digging into a lot of detail about what could come out of the census. And that is possible because this is such a huge survey. we were able to do that and get reliable data from it. And I defined for them, the largest cities, the smaller cities that I wanted data on. I got data on all cities with at least, I think, 20,000 population in Canada, all municipalities, that is. Some of them would not be counted as cities. So this, and I think the custom data requests cost money for the time it takes them to produce it. Whereas the tables that you get online that I showed you how to collect information and slice and dice some of their information, that's free to download. So you can just download that and take it and work with it and cite them properly, and they're fine with that. But the custom data request costs money, and I think mine was $2,000 to $3,000 this time around for a pretty detailed data request. I could be remembering incorrectly. I haven't looked at the actual cost for 3 or 4 years now, so it's been a while. But so that's also available. And the custom data request, I've done it almost exclusively for the census, but you could do a data request from, I think, from almost any type of survey that they have. You might want things cross-cut in different ways that they don't allow for in their online, because in their online information, it is summary in many ways. So it's not everything that you could want, but it is, there is quite a bit there. So I think I will end there because my time is certainly up by now. And just that is the quickest of quick overviews into my life and what I do a lot of the time.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for that incredible presentation. I will be opening up the floor to the Q&A section. So as usual, we'll do 2 in person, 2 online. For those online, if you could just pop, I think the letter is P in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sheesh.
Hi, Kelly. Okay, a couple questions. One is, and you can decide what order you want to answer them. So the first one is, do you use information in cultural industries as one of your data sets, and what are some caveats around that? When you're looking through the daily, what are some examples of titles of reports that you wouldn't necessarily think would be culture related, but actually have great data sets? Because I think I'm probably looking too narrowly at culture and maybe tourism, but I'm sure there's other areas that you could recommend. And then lastly, what's one thing, I have 2 more questions. The other question is, what are some caveats that we should be aware of when looking at cultural data with StatsCan? Things that you've learned along the way, things that we need to consider. And then a kind of a bigger question, what's 1 or 2 things that you know now that you wish you had known at the beginning?
Okay, do I have another 15 or 20 minutes to answer those questions? I'm mostly kidding. Cultural industries, yes, I look at cultural industries, which, for those of you not so familiar with the cultural sector, often refers to the for-profit side of the cultural sector, things like film production and film distribution, etc. Yes, I look at those a decent amount of time, but if I'm stuck with using the summary categories that StatsCan puts out, I will tend to look at arts, entertainment, and recreation because it is the most artsy of them, and I do statistical insights on the arts, which was named for that reason, with that in mind, that it's about the arts where possible. It's not statistical insights on culture, if possible. I didn't name it that, so we try to do stuff on the arts specifically. But yes, I try to do cultural industries information where possible, and sometimes in the best data sets, like the ones that are specifically come out for the cultural sector from StatsCan's culture portal or whatever you want to do. And I neglected to mention in my presentation that StatsCan does have some pages specifically tailored to different interests, let's say, and they do have a culture portal there, which would contain, I don't know, maybe 1/10 of the information the type of information that I publish in Statistical Insights in the Arts, because they don't mine their other data sets for insights about arts and culture. They just say, this is the cultural stuff that we have that is about culture, period, and that should be of interest to you. Now that I've answered question number 1, I forget questions 2, 3, and 4.
2 was about the daily.
Yeah, the daily, that's a very hit and miss process. I, at different points in my career, have dug into things that I go, oh, I don't know what this survey is about. So it's kind of a trial and error process to get going with that. But the one that is, I'd say there's one survey that is surprisingly useful to me, has been surprisingly useful to me, and I think it is a quarterly survey of business conditions. And they ask businesses about different things that might be of interest to them at a certain point. So if you've followed anything that I've published on inflation and what the perception is in the arts about inflation, that has come from the Canadian Survey on Business Conditions. Because that survey, they do publish the data online, like I showed you, and you can drill down by industry. You could also drill down by not for profit and for profit, but not within each industry, just overall. But that survey has been much more of a golden mine than I would have anticipated even before I started my Substack 4 or 5 years ago. I guess, what do I wish that I knew 30 years ago? How tricky it would be to find information on the sector. I wish I had known the 20 minutes of time that I've been talking before I'd known all of this 30 years ago, which is impossible, of course. But just the depth of effort it takes just to ferret these things out and to find these things, as I think you alluded to, Elena, is not, it's not easy. Like the ones that the information that seems obviously about the cultural sector is great, but that's the best kind of information that we can get and are really useful to some extent. But they only go so far, and that is not super far. And I think there was one more question in there that I haven't answered.
Caveats. Anything to do with caveats?
Caveats. Oh, do we have a day or more? StatsCan doesn't deal with the cultural sector and artists that much. So they're not experts on the arts and culture by any means. There are very few people there where that is any proportion of their workload. So we really have to define what we want and what we mean in different ways. So that means a lot of work and sometimes a lot of back and forth about what things might mean. And I'll give you a specific example where StatsCan gave me erroneous data from the census almost 10 years ago now. It was because I wanted data for people who were captured in their jobs as of May of, it would have been 2011, I guess, at that point. No, maybe it was 2016, sorry, in May of 2016, plus anybody who had worked as an artist, specifically in the occupation codes that I brought out for them in the previous 6 months, since the beginning of the year, I think it was, so the previous 5-ish months. And I wanted all of those to be captured because the workflows of artists are much iffier than the workflows of people who have a quote-unquote regular paid job. So I wanted to cast that broader net because I thought it better represented artists. But what they gave to me was the data that was just who worked on in May of 2016. So that was really hard to catch. And they didn't ask the questions about, let's call it the universe, what they would call the universe of the data. And I thought I was clear on what I had mentioned, but when I look back and I said, okay, it wasn't 100% clear, but they should have asked the question. So I was really disappointed with that, and that was really tricky. So there's lots of tricky things about interacting with StatsCan in that way, but that's kind of an example, a really specific example that hurt me a number of years ago.
Thank you.
We're just gonna do one more question in the room, and then we'll also switch to what's online. So, another question within the room? Okay, travel all the way to the front. Wait, sure.
Hi, so in addition to StatsCan data, what other open data sets do you think are of value? And is there one data set that you wish was open but doesn't exist out in the open?
Oh, there are probably a million ones that I wish we could have maybe data to, or things that we could have data on. I get asked every week, oh, do you have data on this? Do you have data on that? I would like to know about this. How about this in the arts sector? And my answer is almost always, great question. Unfortunately, we don't have data on that. I've got kind of a standard email now to that effect, basically, because there's much more that in the arts and culture specifically that we don't know about than what we do know about. So that's not necessarily about data sets being closed versus open. It's more about data sets not really existing or not really capturing the sector that I deal with most of the time. Your question about are there other data sets? I mentioned the ones that I work with most of the time, and usually I work with StatsCan data because it captures the world that I deal with more often than anybody else. I kind of wish the charities listing, which is in theory open, was a bit better organized and a bit better queryable than it might be. But some people have done a pretty good job with that. But there again, the definitions of what is arts and what is culture for me in my sector is quite tricky. There's some parts, like most data sets, there's some parts of, oh, that's definitely an arts organization. That's definitely an arts organization. That category is definitely an arts organization. But there are other categories that are, say, foundations, and we have foundations in the arts that deal specifically with the arts, but they're not always, there might be just a category for foundations, charitable foundations per se, rather than a category for arts foundations. So, we're missing part of the picture. So it's always cobbling together the parts of the picture that we know about and then at least trying to guesstimate what we don't know about in terms of what is outside of that frame. So that is a constant challenge in my work.
Hi, Kelly. So other than StatsCan, I was wondering about CADAC data because CADAC has aggregate data that's also publicly available. So have you, and I believe you've done some analysis. I was looking at the website maybe about in around 2012, 2013, if I'm not mistaken. But I was wondering, have you used CADAC data, especially like there's statistical information, not financial, because financial is also available in the charities, and why or why not?
Oh, that's a tricky question. When I have analyzed CADAC data, it was actually at the request of, let's say, the manager of CADAC, the Canada Council for the Arts. So I've looked at CADAC data many other times, but never. My the Canada Council for the Arts people still here? Let me see. I have had trouble with CADAC in terms of getting access to the data in sufficient detail that I could do a valuable analysis from it. So that access to the data for a researcher who is not part of an arts organization, who runs a for-profit, at least nominally for-profit company, is a bit trickier. But maybe the bigger question about CADAC data is who isn't in that data set, because that is only people who have applied to a public funder of certain that are members of CADAC. So that does leave out a decent slice of the arts world. And I'm worried about those that are not in that data set as well. I think CADAC data if properly analyzed, is valuable as far as it goes, but it only goes so far, and it only can go so far because it is, based on applications that you can't make other people put in their financial information to something that they're not going to get any sort of return from ever. So I understand the limitations, but that is a pretty serious limitation from an overall standpoint. I think you've got the largest not-for-profits that would be in that data set, but not for-profit organizations in culture or for-profit businesses in culture, and not in the arts specifically, and not a lot of the smaller ones that exist in communities across the country.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.